Welcome to Seth's Daily Podcast here on Nighthawk Radio. You listen to Seth's Daily Podcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. on nighthawk-radio.com. Appreciate everybody that's listening. Give us a subscription on YouTube. Give us a like and follow on Facebook. We're on Rumble now. Give us a subscription on Rumble. We're blessed enough to have an interview with 2028 presidential candidate Jacqueline. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to be on.
Oh, of course, anytime. Pardon my messy art room.
You're fine. And now we can talk about the issues that upcoming election. And I know one of the biggest issues right now is the files that Trump has not released. So what's your thoughts on that?
As far as files that haven't been released, I can understand that there's a lot of difference in understanding across people and politics, right? But the way I look at it is if it's information that is relevant to the public, it should be released to the public. Transparency in our government is a key way to get trust back in our government, not only in the US government, but also anything dealing with foreign policies.
Yeah, that's what he ran on.
It's been really hard, I think, because there's so many people that are easy to pick one side or pick one piece of information that gets shared. At the same time, though, I mean, we have people of all levels of understanding and all different walks of life. So at a certain point, yeah, release the info, make sure it's carefully released, make sure it's transparent, though, you know what I mean? And make sure there's documents to back up what you're talking about and what you're releasing.
So if you was president, you would release the files.
Yep. I believe in 100% transparency, where finances are going, where healthcare is going, where tax money is going, where education's going, all of it. It needs to be made public and it needs to be open to the public to talk about, drop their opinions, their life experience. That's part of what makes us strong as a US.
Definitely. And what's your thoughts on the UFO files? I know that's one of my favorite subjects.
So that's funny because I actually have a friend who was like, if you become president, can you release the UFO files? And I was like, we will sit down and have a talk about it. I think that should be public info as well. You know, what do we have to show if we're not communicating with each other? What trust do we have in each other? As far as I'm concerned, drop that as public too.
Definitely. I mean, that's definitely something I want to see is the UFO files because I mean that's just a selfish reason.
Right?
I just
I
want to
mean,
see it
it's
myself.
okay. Everyone's interested. Everyone's interested.
Yeah, definitely. What's your thoughts on the big beautiful bill?
Ooh, the big beautiful bill. So actually, it's funny because I was just having a conversation about this earlier. I'm a CNA over here in the state of Colorado for my son, who is a little one. He's only 7, but he's level 3 autistic. So I got my CNA license and I provide caregiver services for him, like homemaker services, community connection like services and also my CNA services. So his waiver through the state, guess what? Through Medicaid. So the big beautiful bill and things of the sort directly affect me and also thousands of other people. As far as I'm concerned, Medicaid cuts is something that is not a go in my book. Medicaid, while we do need to make sure that the money is getting allocated properly and documented properly and audited properly, we still have a bunch of individuals who cannot represent themselves. They can't speak for themselves. Younger community, special needs community, elderly communities, and we've got caregivers who are taking care of them that don't know how to navigate the system because it's so complicated and polluted with bureaucratic paperwork, anyways.
That's very true. A lot of paperwork, actually.
Right, it is. It took me a year alone to be able to get this paperwork, to go to that waiver, to this paperwork, to now get this different questionnaire, now fill out this thing. And, unfortunately, my son, who was almost completely nonverbal about 2 years ago, was stuck in the middle of not getting proper care because of all the nonsense paperwork. Yeah, it needs to go to the right places, and we need to make sure that it's being allocated the funding and, the paperwork to the right people who are providing services. But at the same time, drowning families underneath isn't the right answer.
Definitely. The big beautiful bill is a disaster. It also adds $5 trillion in debt.
Right. And that's the thing is not only are we, making it harder for the caregivers to give care, and we're cutting the money that's already allocated for Medicare and Medicaid purposes. So now those people aren't getting care, the caregivers aren't getting paid. I personally myself have had an issue with I provide services through two different companies, and my hours got cut and how much is cleared for my son's waiver. So it's personally affected me as well. And then we're going into trillions of dollars worth of debt for it. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Now we're not providing care and we're in enormous debt. Where's that going to solve any problems?
It's not. This is going to add more problems to the American citizens and not the big people in office. Um,
Right. I think there's a lot to be said as far as the little people, quote unquote, which I don't really believe in the little people versus the big people, but for sake of the argument here, not enough regular people have voices that are willing to speak up all the time or are even confident to speak up all the time. Caregivers experience, especially in like what we're talking about now with the big beautiful bill, caregivers experience is important. That is a key factor that needs to get taken into account when we're talking about money being allocated for caregiving, for insurance.
it's a disaster, honestly.
It really is. And it's really causing a lot more problems for us, even just aside from the people who aren't getting the care. It's causing a lot of problems for us as far as how we're being looked at as a nation, in the sense of how well we take care of the people we even have here.
Definitely. What's your thoughts on the border? What would you do if you was president? How would you handle the border? Differently
Ooh,
from
so
Trump and Biden.
yeah, so the border gets complicated. It does. And I can understand that there's certain amounts of jobs, there's certain amounts of, healthcare to get allocated out to people, things of the sort, Social Security. Really, I actually had dropped on my TikTok a trade agreement proposal that I thought would kind of help and think might be a little bit pertinent here in this conversation. Also talking about things along the border, right? So my idea the basis of it that I could give you without dropping a whole like 7-page document here is that if we had more open communication between other nations, it would not only teach us, but it would also teach other participating nations on how our businesses run, how our economy works, how our healthcare system works, how people communicate, different communicational skills, different cultural values. I think those things are really important. So, Border Patrol, it has to be monitored because there are people who are not necessarily in line with our ideas or our values. There are criminals who are trying to come across. But as far as other families that need help and their children, to turn away little kids seems kind of inhumane to me.
So so you're saying if you're president, if there's like somebody that commits a violent crime, you will deport them.
They would have to go through essentially our legal process. I'm not going to say that I would deport somebody without any information or without having a background history as far as what's happening. It has to be proved. things have to be proved as far as what's happened, what kind of crime has been committed. But at the same time, we need to get our feet moving on some of these things. Keeping families separated, even if it's regular families, if it's a criminal, it's lagging the process and it's causing us taxpayers here a lot more money to keep them in limbo. And it's destroying families for the families that are trying to show up here legally and get a life, contribute to our society and our economy.
Yeah, say if somebody comes from Cuba and they're trying to get away from dictatorship in Cuba, we should definitely accept them for sure.
I mean, right, as long as they're going about the legal methods, I think really citizenship, I think some of it is really complicated and really hard to understand. And I know that I have a few friends who are from other countries. In fact, actually, my husband wasn't born in the US. And his family came across, and all legal stuff taken care of, but it was a hell of a process. And there's a lot of time. I mean, I can't tell you. I think a lot of the times the people who are wanting to come into the US, they probably know some more about US history than even we do as Americans here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That would actually help you with the border even more, being married to somebody that has been through the process.
Right, right, yeah. And I've asked him hundreds of times, like, what was it like, Because I was curious, because I was born here. I was born in California, you know what I mean? Um, and I realized I had no idea what the process really was up until I had asked somebody, because I never had to go through it. Well, that's kind of the wrong answer too. Like regular people, us US people need to be educated on what other families and other people are having to go through when they're trying to come here. Not everybody's a criminal, and I don't think everybody should be treated like one either.
No, no, no. I'm just saying if they got like they could be from anywhere and say they got like did a violent crime in another country or something, you would deport them through the
I mean,
process.
people, right, through a correct process, yeah. I think there needs to be more communication, though, between the two nations that are involved. You know, our impression of a violent crime is not necessarily somebody else's impression of a violent crime, right? And there's a lot of communication barriers and cultural barriers, I think, that we're not always taking into account. So, yeah, we don't want a bunch of people just flooding the borders, trying to commit a bunch of crimes and not helping support our economy. But at the same time, I don't know that it's a correct answer to just whoosh everybody out without having all the right info.
Yeah, especially if people been here for like 10, 20 years and they're a decent human being. And actually, let's be real, the people that's coming in here that's working and all that stuff, they're working harder than some of our citizens.
That that is true. That is the truth. So my husband, his family is in Southern California, and I know that his sister had sent him videos of like people are scared to go to work at this point. They are afraid to go to work because if you're too much one tone of your skin color, next thing you know, you got people rolling up on you and grabbing you, beating you out senseless outside of your job, where you're just trying to support your family. That is ridiculous. There is no
Yeah,
reason that people should be so scared to go to work, especially if they're here legally and trying to help, help their families, help the economies. There's no reason for them to need to be detained immediately and treated like criminals until they're proven innocent. Isn't our saying innocent until proven guilty? And if you don't have any documents or paperwork saying that they're guilty, then they're innocent in my book.
yeah. People think that Trump's the one that started the deportation, but it was actually Obama. Obama actually deported 1 million more people than Trump has this year
Yeah, I think the Trump just got a lot more like, spotlight on him as far as it happening. I
because he said
don't
stupid shit.
remember. I mean, definitely stuff that people like, disagreed with. I'll tell you this much though, I can't remember if when Obama was president because I was out of the States for a while. if things were as violent as they have been recently. Because when we came back here to the US, my husband and I, and our kiddos, I was almost afraid to come back.
Huh.
We both were, we both were a little afraid to come back. It was the BLM stuff was happening. It was the COVID stuff was happening. And I was like, holy goodness gracious, what in the world is happening back in the US? People are getting beaten senseless and they're dying left and right. And it was concerning to know that we were going to be coming back here when everything seemed to be in shambles and we didn't even have people supporting each other with the right information.
Yeah, Trump. I mean, I voted for Trump. I can't lie to you, but I'm very disappointed in how he's handled this term.
I mean, honestly, I'm prior service myself, so I'm a veteran, and I have a lot of people who are still friends of mine in the active duty military. I have friends of mine who have gotten out who are also veterans. I've got family members who voted Trump and against Trump, and I've had all different kinds, and I think there's a lot of aspects that have been good from each president we've had, and I think there's a lot of aspects that have been pretty bad too, if I'm being honest.
Definitely. Yeah, there's definitely been some with every president, there's some good stuff and good bad stuff that they do. And yeah. Trump Trump has disappointed me with the files, not releasing them, promising to release them, and the big beautiful bill also is a disaster. But anyways, what's your thoughts on defunding the police?
Ooh, defunding the police. That is not the answer. That, in my personal opinion, that is not the answer. However, the police need to be policed. The police are not above the law just because they are the law. You know what I mean? I think the focus needs to turn around and be more on how do the police support the communities again? How do they actually functionally take care of the communities? Because I know I have handfuls of friends probably who would be afraid to call the police if something had happened to them. That's not okay. You know what I mean? They need to be policed as far as they're not above the law. What they're doing, legally speaking, represents the rest of your city, of your state, your county, the US in general when we're talking about the federal government and things of the sort. It's not an answer to get rid of them, but there needs to be a moment where we clean through house, you know? We have to make sure that the people who are supposed to be representing the people as far as their safety, that's their number one concern.
Exactly. You shouldn't have to be scared to walk out your house and say, "Am I going to be stopped by the police today?"
Right. Or if something happens to you, you shouldn't have to be afraid to call the police if you legitimately need help that you cannot, support yourself.
Yeah, police brutality is definitely real. I know a lot of people out there believe it's not, and a lot of people in my party thinks that every police is good, but um, there's some good cops, but there's some bad cops as well. To say every cop is good is insane.
Right, right. Yeah, not everybody's good, not everybody's bad. It's a mixed bunch. And I think it's just a different time that the spotlight gets put on the good ones or the bad ones. It's about time that we finish with the spotlight, do a clean through the house, make sure we have the people who are supposed to be protecting us with the intent of protecting us. Why in the world is it that, oh no, this cop has to meet this quota and now 20 people are getting pulled over the night before? That's insane. You know, there needs to be, especially in that sense too, budgeting and funding really needs to be taken into account because at a certain point, they're trying to get paid and they're trying to make lives for themselves as well, right? So at a certain point, we're ending up, sorry, my laptop decided it wanted to start dying. Okay.
You're
At a
fine.
certain point, we can't really necessarily have them struggling to death either, it really needs to be a clean house. They need to be monitored, they need to be policed, and we need to make sure that people's Safety is their number one concern, or else they don't need to be in law enforcement. That is my honest opinion.
Exactly. If you have a history of being a racist, you should not be able to be a cop.
Agreed. I completely agree. There is no question there in my mind whatsoever, because taking care of people doesn't come down to finance, it doesn't come down to race, it doesn't come down to gender, sexuality. It's taking care of people. That's it. Bottom line.
Yep. And also, cops that infringe on people's rights, they should also no longer be cops as well and shouldn't be hired by another police department like they are right now.
Right. There needs to be inner communication, you know? Hey, this is what's happening over here, as opposed to, okay, it can happen over here, and then there's oversight or a lack of oversight, pardon me. And then they go over, 2 states away, and then now they're fine. Nothing happened, you know? That's ridiculous. There needs to be a wider net of accountability for the people who are upholding our legal and financial everything, really, when it comes down to law enforcement.
Definitely. I mean, everybody just needs to be held accountable for their actions.
Completely agreed. I completely agree.
What's your thoughts on term limits? I know that's a very important subject for people, not the people in office. Obviously, they don't want term limits.
Right. I think we need to overhaul the system there as well, if I'm being honest. I think that a lot of the aspects where we've talked about term limits have not been reevaluated for the society that we're living in. This is not the 1800s. I mean, goodness gracious, it's not even the 1900s anymore, even though I hate saying that because it dates me a little bit. Um, we have to keep revamping our government in the sense of what we're living in currently. So the beliefs of my grandparents are not necessarily my beliefs, you know? And if our any kind of anything government speaking is set up for that kind of thinking. We started back here and now we're just going to keep on going with that. Well, that's not necessarily appropriate for the life that we're living now currently with our society. I think it needs an overhaul, if I'm being honest. We need to start reevaluating where the term limits are and seeing if they're appropriate for the position that our society is in currently. And there needs to be more limits as far as getting people like reviews essentially, or, almost kind of like an auditing system of, hey, you've been here for this long, and we need to see if you're still on board with the rest of the government where the rest of our government is at. You don't just get a safe seat because you've been here for forever. You know what I mean?
Mitch McConnell from my state, he's been in there forever.
Yeah. How long has it been now?
30 some years, I believe.
The
He's
30
not
might be
running
a
again,
bit.
though. Yeah, he's not running again, but well, hell, Rogers been in there since '84. He's the
Yeah,
congressman from my area.
that's before I was born even. So
That's before I was born too. I was born in '98. I ain't even gonna lie.
87. But the problem is that, I mean, as far as seniority goes, it's not necessarily in line with where our economy is, where our society is, any of those things. So if you've been there for a while, it's not always just a safe pass. We need to make sure that you're on board with where the rest of our government is going. We need to work, I think personally, my opinion here is going to be that we need to work more as a cohesive unit than we do a partied system. I mean, I'm actually kind of all for getting rid of the political parties, if I'm being honest, because I think they create a lot of tension. I think there's people who are so worried about being Republican or Democrat that they're willing to blind themselves to the issues that are going on and not have any idea why they're voting Republican or Democrat. At this point, vote for what you believe in, vote for the person who's saying what you believe in or supports what you believe in, you know what I mean? Regardless of a title or anything like that.
Yeah, I hate both parties. I actually had the Libertarian Party, former chairman of the Libertarian Party of Kentucky on last week, and we was talking about both parties being crooked and stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's no party is safe from the crooked. Honestly, I say wipe house as far as that goes, and let's get rid of the titles and let's start focusing on people taking care of people and supporting people because you care about people.
Yep. What's your thoughts on Trump abolishing the Department of Education?
Ooh, I am not a fan of that. I am not a fan of that. So, growing up, I grew up with my grandparents, and they always made a big deal about education, stay in school, learn all you can, you know what I mean? And I've tried to implement the same things in my household. I have the 7-year old who's on the spectrum that I mentioned, and then I also have a 14-year-old teenager. And I'm like, go to school, go learn things. I homeschool my youngest because right now he's not in the like at the right position to be in public school yet. So I've been doing that. I actually have a teachers pay teachers account. I drop educational materials and therapy materials and stuff like that. So education is a big deal for me. There's a lot of different ways to look at education. I think we have not taken into account or given credit where it belongs, as far as like there's internships, there's college, there's high school, there's other alternative learning, there's lots of different things, and we're not taking into account also like lived in experience, you know what I mean? If people have experience, they have education to share. Education needs to be shared. The Department of Education, however, it did need an overhaul also. I'm not a fan of the fact that it's gone completely. I think that there still should be some kind of, I hate to use the word oversight because it sounds so
Government?
horrible. Yeah, it just sounds so horrible. It really does. It sounds dictator-like. But there needs to be people evaluating where we're at. You know what I mean? As far as education, as far as grants or scholarships, things like that. It needs to be paid attention to. But I think that our spectrum, as it's been for the past handful of years, also, even longer probably, has not been broad enough as far as covering all the bases. You know, there's lived in experience, knowledge. There's people out there working on farms. There's people in colleges, in schools. There's people in homeschool, in charter, in continuation. Things like that need to get accounted for, and people who don't have access to public education need to have access to public education, or they need to have access to caregivers who can get the information that they are searching for to educate our kids. That's the next generation coming up, you know what I mean?
Definitely. And the board I'm on, we actually work with giving grants to people who want to be farmers and stuff. So yeah, the Department of Education is definitely very important because, like you said, that's the future of our heck, that's the future president possibly coming from.
Right. That's the future of all the rest of us people on this planet. You know, there needs to be environmental, agricultural, as well as just book studies. You know, it's not all about go to college, get a job. Yeah, that is important and that is some people's trajectory, but we need to support the people who that's not their trajectory. You know, if that's not what they want to do, that's not what they want to do. That doesn't mean that they can't have open resources to knowledge or education.
Be an electrician or something like that.
Right. Actually, aside from being a CNA, I'm a mechanic. So,
Really?
yeah. Yeah, I do it all. But I actually did go to college for computer information systems. I'm a live painter up in Denver, also in Colorado Springs. I do vending. I have two small businesses. I mean, I've been a small business owner. I've been in the medical sector, currently am. I've been in the trade jobs sector, currently my mechanic stuff is on a little bit of hold. I do most of my stuff out of my garage, but I've walked through each different aspect of education and jobs, and I will tell you what, they are not in line currently with where people are at. They're really not, and the education support system is not broad enough. And it most definitely is not broad enough in the sense of talking about people with disabilities too. You know what I mean? Um, Kind of acting like that's not a thing and keeping everybody to one standardized little box of testing is definitely not the right method to go about.
Definitely. And this is actually a question I just thought of. Um, the stuff they've been putting in our food, like Red Dye 40, RFK Jr. just banned Red Dye 40. What's your thoughts on that? And he's banned other artificial colors as well in food.
Yeah, the big one is the Red 40, I know. I think honestly I don't know that I would say I agree with all of the things that he has said, although I don't completely disagree with all of them either. Artificial stuff in our food is going to sooner or later create medical problems. That is just the reality of it. Humans, as let's talk about millions of years ago when we first started off on the planet, right? Or however long you want to call it, it wasn't artificial stuff in our food. It was real stuff grown out of the ground. I actually, oddly enough, have a case study that I've been doing about medical stuff and looking at different herbs and different kinds of aspects of how, the food that we're intaking has affected some of the diseases that we have going on. And I mean, you can't pretend the info's not there. You really can't. It is there. There are facts, this artificial dyes, artificial fillers. Even if we didn't have the proof that it was causing diseases, we also still have the proof that it's just not good for you. I don't want to eat plastic. I'm not going to go pick up a piece of plastic and eat it, it kind of ties right back into what we were talking about as far as like the Department of Education supporting more broad sectors like agricultural stuff. You know what I mean? Without pesticides, figuring out ways to make it so that the food that we are supplying, not only us, but anything exported too, essentially, it's got to be good for you. It's got to be healthy. It's got to be not like eating a paper plate?
We're basically putting poison in our bodies.
Right. And we've been doing it for years. And the truth of it is I had a really good friend of mine. She worked at a chiropractor clinic that I was going to for a while. And in the front of this chiropractor clinic, I kid you not, they had a little glass box that had McDonald's from goodness gracious, I could not tell you how long ago it was, but it looked the exact same. And there is no friggin' way that I believe that that food looked the exact same without some kind of crazy preservatives in it, because that is just the reality. I have a garden in the back of my house. I've had a garden, well, I restarted my garden this year, but a couple of years ago, I had a pretty big, decent sized garden too, where I was doing peppers and tomatoes and radishes and zucchinis. And I will tell you what, you can grow food that is healthy for you without preservatives. You can do it. It is possible. Yeah, the lifespan or like shelf span time is a little bit shorter, but if we're helping the people who are growing the food and making an actual rotating circle of when it's getting grown and how it's getting distributed, there is no reason that we cannot feed our people as well as our exports with food that's actually food.
Yeah, Red Dye 40's been linked to cancer.
Right. There's been so many. I mean, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not. But there are so many things that lead to diseases For Jiminy Christmas' sake, I will tell you the fact of the matter is I was researching a while back ago, and around the time that I was born, the polio vaccine had changed a little bit. Prior to when I was born in '87, the polio vaccine was giving people cancer. Science and medical science, it's ever evolving. It has to have stop points where we look at the effects that it's taking on our people. That is just the end game dot period for me. You know what I mean? It has to be natural. We have to look at the effects medically, financially speaking, educational wise speaking. It really crosses a span of topics that we'd be talking about here.
Yep. Yeah, they've been putting bad stuff in our vaccines and foods for years.
I mean, if you even like, how long was it? I don't know. I'm going to ask you a personal question here. It's not too personal, but how long did you spend microwaving your cup of noodles in the cup in the microwave?
About a minute.
Right, right. And microwaving styrofoam, not the best for you. It took me a hot amount of years because nobody talked about it when I was younger. It says on the lid, like, put the water in it and then, then cover it up. But I mean, I know I was thinking anyways. Oh, to stick it in the microwave, that's way easier. Yeah, it's way easier. And also now all the stuff that's in the styrofoam is going into my food. Hold on a second. Seems like an issue. And I microwave mine for 3 minutes. So I think my health is even worse in comparison.
They've actually made them where you can stick them in the microwave now.
Yeah, I've seen a few of them that you can, and it's not as bad. But I mean, look at just even the amount of time that, even between our age difference, probably, that people have been uninformed. That's probably a lot of people. And that's probably a lot of people intaking different chemicals and stuff from things before we figured out ways to even make it so that, we could microwave a cup of noodles, right?
Definitely. Oh, I could get on the COVID vaccine, but I won't.
I had to get it because I'm a CNA. I'll tell you what though, doing the COVID vaccine and the flu vaccine at the same time is pretty gnarly.
I wouldn't do that. Good.
Yeah. Trust me, the next day following, I was like, if this was not for me being able to give care to my youngest son on the spectrum, I don't know that I would have done this. Because I typically don't like questionable vaccines of the sort. Not to say that anyone is any more or less questionable at this point, but there needs to be a lot of research, and we need to make sure that stuff is being very thoroughly looked at before we start pumping shots into people.
That's true. Yeah. So you wouldn't support a mandate.
I mean, at this point, I just want to revamp most of the systems. So let's just let's just wipe them and start from the beginning. I've got so much experience in different aspects of life, you know what I mean? That at this point, if I were to be elected president, I'm gonna sit down with every stinking department and we're gonna go through and we're gonna clean house and we're gonna make sure the info that's happening is correct. We're going to make sure that the people can see what's happening. There's transparency. And we're going to make sure that it's done right for once because I'm tired of watching it all go to shit. Hopefully, I can say that on here.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, cool.
That's good about being an online radio station. You can say whatever you want.
Oh, yeah, that's phew, thank goodness. Because I'll tell you what, occasionally I'll drop a couple. I try to stay away from most of the ones that you shouldn't have your kids here. You know what I mean? But
Yeah. The only thing we don't really say is the F bomb.
right. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much when I was in Germany, I was teaching arts and crafts to kids, and I definitely had to tone back the F-bombs a little bit because you get used to saying them. You know what I mean? They come up in casual conversation.
Yeah, just being a human, you say it all every day, really. I do. I'm not even gonna lie. I say an F bomb all the time.
I mean, I'll tell you what, let's be honest, because since I'm all about transparency, I swear like a sailor. but not in front of other people's kids.
Oh yeah, I respect that. Hey, what made you want to run for president?
Honestly, it's actually kind of an interesting story. So, I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandmother just passed away this past December. And we were on the phone a little bit before, I think it was a couple weeks before she passed away. And she was complaining to me about a bunch of different things, like what the hell's going on in the world? And I'm like, I don't, I call her mom because she raised me. I was like, Mom, I don't know. I have no idea what the hell's going on in the world. And she was like, something needs to get fixed. And I was like, you know what? I agree. I think I'm going to run for president. And she was like, you should do that. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And she goes, look, just listen to people. That's what you need to do. Just talk to people and listen to people. And then, uh, goodness gracious, rest her soul. She died like 2 weeks later. And I was like, all right, well, running for president. Made a promise to my grandma.
Yeah, it takes a lot of guts to run for office. So being a 23-year-old run for office, it was definitely a interesting experience.
Yeah, that's been a lot of. I'm still currently in the phase of spending or raising $5,000 to officially be known as a candidate and trying to get all the stuff together. I mean, my paperwork game is like point on because, I've got a kid with special needs, so my paperwork game is usually pretty point on. But trying to figure out how to do that, how to run my household, how to still take care of, my cars that are always breaking down, goodness gracious, how to support my teenager who's now going into high school for his first year, how to do homeschooling and support my special needs son. And I mentioned I have a teachers pay teacher, so I'm dropping educational therapy stuff on there. I'm trying to keep up with my TikTok. You want to talk about Instagram accounts? I've got like 100 of them, for different hobbies and different things that I have. And really, trying to balance everything out is horribly complicated. But I will tell you that since I did decide that I wanted to run for president, being able to sit down and grab a notepad and some cool glitter pens, because that's me, I'm all about glitter pens. Um, Being able to sit down and really, really tear apart what I think about how our government's been run and how communication is lacking or not lacking. It's really shown me a lot more than even I paid attention to when I was a service member.
Yeah, there's a lot of bullcrap going on.
There really is. There really is. But I think we've got a basis of now as much as horrible as it is, we have a basis of, okay, this is what we don't want to happen. You know what I mean? And now this is where we need to get better, or this is where we can see things going. This is our point as, a nation to change the trajectory, to change up some of the vocab, change the economics. We have the potential to do that. And we have the potential to have stronger international ties, more understanding culturally, economically with people than we've ever had before. Because look at how far technology spans now, right? We can do all that. And the amount of stuff that we can do is we're not meeting those goals right now in my mind. We're not meeting them.
Definitely. What's your thoughts on Trump wanting to get Greenland as a territory? Uh,
I mean, so typically my answer to anything relatively close to this would be we are not the US police or we're not the world police. The US is not the world police. You know what I mean? I think that it should be the conversation at this point should be less about who's the superpower and more about how we can lift each other up and learn from each other. Obviously, there are a whole lot of tensions going on right now at the moment. Ukraine, Russia, all across the globe, there's tensions going on, and I think there always have been. I think it's about time we change that conversation. I think it's about time that we stop placing bad guy roles or who's more successful roles on ourselves and on other international, nations, countries, stuff like that. There's not enough human conversation going on right now, and I think that you don't get very far without communicating like humans.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I don't know. He's got an obsession with Greenland. I
I mean, maybe it's because it's not so green.
don't know why he wants it, but yeah, I
I
think
think I think it's a power thing. That's what I kind of think it is, if I'm being honest, it's a power thing. It's we've been a power in the world for forever, but that doesn't have to be the final story of our, world, essentially. Nobody, I think, personal opinion here, nobody has to be a superpower. We can work together and we can teach each other and learn from each other. Part of my trade agreement proposal that I did drop on my TikTok was an idea of taking one business, one big business, one small business, and a nonprofit. And any nation that were to join in with this agreement, right, could send three to another nation, and then they'd be able to learn their economics, their culture, their communication, how they live, stuff like that. And I think if we could stop focusing so much on how much money are we getting, we could also still help out other people who need help and learn from them. That is a big gap in where we're at, I think, as a society. I know myself living in Germany for I was there for about 3.5 years. I learned a whole lot about how people functioned. And when I went there, and I'll be honest here, I will be as honest as I can be. I seriously was like, oh, those are German people, and they're not really like Americans, but they are kind of. And so are Italian people, and so are French people. And they're all kind of just like us, only we speak different languages, but not even really that much. You know what I mean? We all still have the same damn problems. We're still worried about how our government runs. We're still worried about how to feed our kids. We're still worried about jobs, education. It's about time that we take into account other countries are on the same page as we are and we learn something from them and then we teach them something in the process. How else do we keep people on the globe?
definitely. Yep. There's so many issues we could talk about.
There really are. There's like 100 of them. I mean, we need like a giant spreadsheet on the wall, like in those like police like shows and stuff, and some red lines and tape and
But no, I would definitely. I mean, if you're down, we can definitely do a weekly show or something like that.
yeah, I'm totally down. You can rapid fire any question you like at me, and I'll answer them all.
Yeah, I mean, I can go live on YouTube now and everything. So,
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah, I definitely am trying to span out my horizons, get more visibility and the truth is I cannot even say how happy I am to be able to just one, I want to thank you, have the opportunity to be able to do this, and just the internet, as much horrible BS comes off the internet. We also have some really good tools on the internet. You know what I mean? Um but
absolutely,
yeah, trying to span out the communication and stuff and be able to have people hear something, that's really what I hope for. Even in just the me running for president part, if someone hears something that makes sense, you know what I mean? That matters. That means that I changed something. And that's really, I think, the goal of it, aside from just being able to be on the ballot and, have somebody check my name next to, yeah, vote for her, is hopefully somebody can learn something. We can share information, share our knowledge, and essentially grow more as people because of it.
definitely. I appreciate you being on. What's your TikTok and Instagram accounts?
So I've got so many Instagram accounts, it's ridiculous.
What's your main one?
I really do. I think right now it's currently EXO just a doll face. Um, my TikTok is currently EXO Dolly Girl, spelled DOLLYGIRL. So most of my stuff gets posted on the TikTok for the presidential stuff. I've also started dropping it onto my Facebook as well. Um, I kind of am trying to keep a balance of some social life, but I've also realized that, polished isn't perfect. And I'm going to post some funny videos of stupid things and weird dishes I've cooked and my US policies that I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So there's always that info too. If anyone wants to search me, it's Jacqueline Archiga. And good luck on the spelling. But you can find it on Facebook, you know what I mean? I'll drop links into my TikTok and stuff like that, and I'll come up with a comprehensive list if you'd like, if you want to have me back here, because I've got a cooking Instagram, I've got a regular Instagram, I've got a business Instagram, I've got a spiritual Instagram, I've got one for some
A
poetry books I'm
spiritual
writing
one.
Instagram. Yeah, I've got all the Instagrams.
Eh. But yeah,
Yeah, totally.
yeah, yeah. I definitely plan on having you on every week if that's cool with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this time good for you? It's works for me.
Yeah, it may be different days because I work retail.
Okay, makes sense. No worries. You have my email, shoot me an email. Next time I will come up with a little paper drop so that we can post the whole dealio of all my Instagram accounts. How about that?
You're good. I want to thank Jacqueline for being on. Everybody have a good night. God bless.